They laughed because they thought she was nobody. They never realized the quiet waitress they humiliated was the only person in the room who truly understood the heart of the man everyone feared. Naomi Carter had learned a long time ago that people often saw what they wanted to see. In the crowded dining room of Bella Vista restaurant, surrounded by polished tables, expensive suits, and conversations filled with confidence, most guests only saw a plus-size black waitress carrying plates between them. They saw her uniform before they saw her kindness. They saw her appearance before they saw her character. And that was exactly why Naomi never allowed their opinions to define her. For years, she had worked long shifts with patience and grace, remembering customers' preferences, helping new employees, and treating every person with the same respect she hoped to receive. She never expected special treatment. She never mentioned the powerful man waiting quietly in her life. Adrian Blackwell was a name that carried weight throughout the city. The white mafia boss was known as a man who commanded respect wherever he went. People carefully chose their words around him, knowing his influence reached places most people could never imagine. But Naomi never looked at him as a man of power. To her, he was simply Adrian, the person who listened when no one else did, the man who understood the quiet battles she faced every day. And that was why she kept their marriage private. Naomi did not want people to treat her differently because of who stood beside her. She wanted to be valued for who she was. That evening, the restaurant was filled with wealthy guests celebrating their success. Among them was a group who believed money gave them permission to look down on others. Their laughter grew louder as Naomi moved through the room, calmly serving each table. They whispered about her appearance, judged her without knowing her story, and treated her kindness as if it were weakness. Naomi heard every word, but she continued working with the same dignity she always carried. She had faced judgment before. She knew that some people only recognized value when it was connected to power. What they did not know was that Adrian Blackwell was sitting across the room, watching everything in silence. He had come to surprise his wife after a long week, expecting to see the woman who always reminded him that kindness still existed in a world filled with suspicion. Instead, he saw something that unsettled him. He saw people disrespect someone who had never given them a reason to do so. He saw Naomi standing alone, refusing to let cruelty change the person she was. Adrian had spent his entire life surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Money, influence, protection. But Naomi had always wanted nothing except honesty. And as he watched her continue serving with quiet strength, he realized something important. The person everyone in that room underestimated was the person who possessed the greatest strength. The night was far from over, and soon everyone would learn that the woman they ignored was not someone without importance. She was the woman who had captured the respect of the one man they never expected to care. Naomi Carter had always understood that silence could reveal more than words. She knew when someone looked at her with respect, and she knew when someone looked at her with judgment. After years of working as a waitress, she had learned how to carry both heavy trays and heavier opinions without allowing either to break her spirit. But Adrian Blackwell saw something different when he watched her. He did not see the woman others ignored. He saw the person who had quietly become the most important part of his life. The following morning, Naomi returned to Bella Vista restaurant as she always did. She arrived early, prepared the dining area, greeted her coworkers, and helped everyone begin their shift. To the people around her, she was simply Naomi, the kind waitress who remembered birthdays, comforted tired employees, and always found a way to make difficult days feel lighter. Very few people knew that behind her simple routine was a connection to one of the most powerful men in the city. Naomi had chosen to keep Adrian's identity separate from her own because she believed a person's worth should never come from the name beside them. She wanted to stand on her own, not behind someone else's reputation. Across town, Adrian Blackwell sat in his private office overlooking the city. The mafia boss was surrounded by everything most people dreamed of having. Wealth, influence, and respect followed him everywhere. Yet the one thing he valued most could never be bought. It was the peace he found whenever he was with Naomi. Adrian had spent years believing that people were motivated by personal gain. His world had taught him to question every smile and every promise. But Naomi had always been different. She never asked for expensive gifts or special favors. She never used his position to make her life easier. Instead, she reminded him of a simpler truth. A person's character mattered more than their status. That evening, Adrian returned to Bella Vista restaurant quietly. He wanted to see Naomi before they went home together. From a distance, he watched her interact with customers. He noticed the way she stayed patient even when people were demanding. He noticed the way she thanked every person who showed her basic kindness. But he also noticed the small moments when people ignored her efforts because they had already decided who they thought she was. Adrian felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel. Not anger, but disappointment. He had built a life where people feared his name, yet the woman he loved walked through a world where people failed to recognize her value. When Naomi finally saw him, her expression softened. She smiled as if his presence alone was enough. "You did not have to come here," she said quietly. Adrian looked around the restaurant before answering. "I wanted to see the place where everyone knows your work, but almost no one knows your heart." Naomi smiled gently, unaware of how deeply those words affected him. For Adrian, that moment became a reminder that power could make people notice him, but kindness was what made people remember someone. And as he stood beside Naomi that night, he realized the world had misunderstood the wrong person. They believed she needed someone powerful to protect her. They did not understand that she had already shown a strength that no amount of influence could create. Adrian Blackwell had spent most of his life learning one simple rule: never show weakness. In his world, trust was rare, and emotions were often hidden behind careful decisions and quiet expressions. People saw him as a man who had everything under control. They saw the expensive cars, the powerful connections, and the respect that followed his name. But they did not see the quiet moments when he questioned whether anyone truly knew him. The only person who never cared about his reputation was Naomi Carter. She never treated him like a man above everyone else. She never changed her voice when speaking to him or acted differently because of his position. To Naomi, Adrian was not a feared mafia boss. He was simply the man who listened when she needed someone to understand. Years earlier, Adrian had met many people who tried to impress him. Some wanted opportunities. Some wanted access to his influence. Some wanted to benefit from his success. But Naomi was different from the beginning. She never asked about his wealth. She never tried to use his name. Instead, she talked about ordinary things that reminded him life was more than power. She talked about family, kindness, and the small moments that people often ignored. That was what made her unforgettable. One evening after closing at Bella Vista restaurant, Adrian waited outside while Naomi finished her shift. The city lights reflected on the streets, and the busy sounds of downtown slowly became quieter. Naomi stepped outside carrying her coat, tired after a long day but still smiling. Adrian noticed the small details others missed. He noticed the way she thanked her coworkers before leaving. He noticed the way she made sure everyone else was comfortable even when she was exhausted. "You always think about everyone else first," Adrian said. Naomi looked at him with a gentle smile. "Someone has to remind people that kindness still matters." Those words stayed with him. Adrian had spent years surrounded by people who measured everything by advantage and power. Naomi measured life differently. She believed a person's worth came from how they treated others when there was nothing to gain. The next day, Adrian visited the restaurant again. This time, he did not come only to see Naomi. He came because he wanted to understand the world she lived in every day. He watched how some customers spoke to her without patience. He watched how she remained respectful despite being overlooked. He realized something that challenged everything he believed. Strength was not always loud. Sometimes strength looked like a woman continuing to be kind in a world that gave her every reason not to be. Adrian had always believed protecting someone meant standing in front of them with power. But Naomi showed him another kind of protection. It was the ability to keep compassion alive even when people failed to offer the same in return. As the days passed, Adrian found himself thinking differently. He began questioning the assumptions he made about people. He began noticing the quiet struggles of those around him. And most importantly, he began understanding why Naomi never wanted to be introduced by his name. She had built her own identity long before she ever became connected to his world. The people who underestimated her only saw what was on the surface. Adrian was beginning to see everything they missed. And that realization would soon change the way he looked at the entire world around him. The evening at Bella Vista restaurant began like any other busy night in the city. The dining room was filled with conversations, the sound of plates moving across polished tables, and the quiet rhythm of people enjoying their meals. But beneath the warm lights and elegant atmosphere, something was about to reveal the difference between how people saw Naomi Carter and who she truly was. Naomi arrived for her shift with the same calm confidence she carried every day. She greeted her coworkers, prepared her section, and focused on giving every guest the best service possible. She knew some people judged her before they ever heard her speak. She knew some people noticed her appearance before they noticed her kindness. But Naomi had stopped allowing those opinions to decide her value. That night, a group of wealthy guests entered the restaurant. They wore expensive clothing, spoke loudly about their success, and carried themselves as if the room belonged to them. From the moment Naomi approached their table, they treated her differently. They did not see a hard-working woman trying to make their evening enjoyable. They saw someone they believed was beneath them. Naomi remained professional. She answered their questions, served their drinks, and continued doing her job with patience. But their disrespect became impossible to ignore. Their comments grew colder, their laughter became more careless, and they began treating her kindness as something they could take advantage of. Around the restaurant, some people noticed what was happening. A few looked uncomfortable, but no one stepped forward. Naomi felt the weight of the moment, but she refused to let it take away her dignity. She had faced difficult situations before. She knew that reacting with anger would only allow others to define her. Instead, she stood with quiet strength. Across the room, Adrian Blackwell watched everything unfold. He had entered the restaurant expecting a peaceful evening with his wife. He had wanted to see Naomi in the place where she spent so much of her time. He wanted to understand more about the life she lived before their worlds connected. But what he saw was something he could not ignore. He saw a woman who gave respect even when she was not receiving it. He saw people judging someone they never bothered to understand. And for Adrian, that realization carried a deeper meaning. He had spent years surrounded by people who feared him because of his reputation. Yet Naomi, a woman who had never used his name for advantage, showed more courage than many people he had known. She did not need power to command respect. She did not need influence to prove her worth. Her strength came from something much rarer. It came from knowing who she was. When one of the guests made another careless remark, the room became quieter. Naomi simply looked at them with calm eyes and continued doing her work. That moment stayed with Adrian. He realized the woman everyone overlooked was the same woman who had taught him the most important lesson of his life. Real strength was not about making others feel small. Real strength was having every reason to fight back, yet choosing to keep your dignity. And as Adrian watched Naomi stand with grace in the middle of a room that failed to appreciate her, he knew the night would change everything. Adrian Blackwell had faced countless difficult moments throughout his life, but very few had made him feel as uncertain as watching Naomi Carter stand alone in a room full of people who refused to see her worth. He was a man who had always believed problems could be solved with influence, decisions, and control. Yet that evening, he discovered something that power could not easily fix. The pain of being judged unfairly was not something that disappeared because someone powerful stepped forward. Naomi did not need someone to speak for her. She needed people to finally see her. After the restaurant became quieter, Adrian approached Naomi as she finished her shift. The confidence he usually carried was replaced by a thoughtful expression. He had seen many people seek attention, sympathy, or advantage from difficult situations, but Naomi had done the opposite. She had remained respectful even when others were not. "Why did you not tell them who you were?" Adrian asked. Naomi looked at him calmly. "Because I should not need your name to deserve respect." Her answer stayed with him. Adrian realized that he had always viewed protection as using his position to remove problems. But Naomi saw protection differently. She believed people should be respected before they knew anything about someone's background or connections. The following days brought a quiet change between them. Adrian became more observant. He noticed the moments when Naomi came home tired but still asked about his day. He noticed how she treated everyone around her with the same kindness, whether they could help her or not. He had known many people who were polite because they wanted something. Naomi was kind because it was simply who she was. Meanwhile, Naomi continued living the same way she always had. She never reminded Adrian of what happened at the restaurant. She never asked him to make anyone apologize. She never wanted special treatment. Her only concern was that people learned to treat others with basic dignity. That was what affected Adrian the most. He was used to people changing their behavior when they discovered his identity. But Naomi had spent years proving her value without anyone knowing his. One afternoon, Adrian returned to Bella Vista restaurant and spoke privately with the manager. He did not make demands. He did not use his reputation to create fear. Instead, he asked questions and listened. He wanted to understand how employees were treated and whether people like Naomi were given the respect they deserved. It was a small decision, but for Adrian it represented a major change. For the first time, he was not trying to control a situation. He was trying to understand it. That evening, Naomi noticed the difference. She saw that Adrian was not simply reacting because he was her husband. He was changing because he finally understood the deeper issue. The problem was never just what happened to her. The problem was how easily people ignored someone's humanity when they believed that person had less power. Adrian looked at Naomi and realized that the woman many people underestimated had shown him a lesson he never learned from wealth or success. A person's true value was never determined by how others treated them. It was revealed by how they continued to treat others despite being misunderstood. And for the first time in years, Adrian Blackwell wanted to become a different kind of powerful man. Adrian Blackwell had spent years building a life where people followed his decisions without question. His reputation opened doors, his influence changed outcomes, and his presence alone could silence a room. But after everything he had witnessed with Naomi Carter, he began to question whether the kind of power he had spent his life building was the kind of power that truly mattered. The woman who worked long hours as a waitress had shown him something that no business deal or position of authority ever could. She showed him that dignity did not come from status. It came from character. In the weeks after the incident at Bella Vista restaurant, Adrian started noticing changes within himself. He listened more carefully. He paid attention to the people around him. He no longer assumed that someone's position determined their importance. Small moments began revealing things he had ignored for years. He saw employees who worked hard without recognition. He saw people who carried personal struggles while still offering kindness to others. And every time, he thought of Naomi. Naomi never tried to teach Adrian a lesson through speeches. She never demanded that he become different. She simply lived according to her values, and that example became more powerful than any argument could have been. One evening, Adrian returned home earlier than usual. The large house that once felt like a place of success but distance now felt different. Naomi was in the kitchen preparing a simple dinner, something she often did despite having access to every luxury money could provide. Adrian watched her for a moment and smiled. "You know, most people would have used my name after what happened," he said. Naomi looked at him with a gentle expression. "Maybe, but I never wanted people to respect me because they were afraid of you. I wanted them to respect me because they understood me." Her words reminded Adrian of why he had fallen in love with her. Naomi had never been impressed by his reputation. She had never been interested in the world that surrounded him. She valued honesty, compassion, and the small choices people made when nobody was watching. The next day, Adrian made a decision that surprised many people around him. He began supporting programs that helped restaurant workers and service employees receive better opportunities and recognition. He did not make public announcements or seek attention. He simply wanted to create change where he saw unfairness. Some people questioned why a man with his influence would focus on ordinary workers. Adrian understood the answer clearly. Those were the people most often ignored. Those were the people who deserved to be seen. Naomi noticed the transformation, but never acted as if she had changed him. She knew Adrian had to discover the truth himself. Growth could not be forced. It had to be chosen. As the months passed, the relationship between Adrian and Naomi became stronger. He was still a powerful man, but he was no longer defined only by power. He was a husband who respected the woman beside him. He was a man learning that protecting someone did not mean speaking over them. It meant standing beside them. And Naomi, the woman many people had judged without knowing her story, remained exactly who she had always been. She never needed a powerful name to prove her worth. She carried her strength with her every day, and eventually, the world around her began to see what Adrian had known all along. Adrian Blackwell had always believed that people revealed who they truly were when they had nothing to gain. For most of his life, he surrounded himself with individuals who respected his position but rarely cared about the person behind the name. He had grown accustomed to hidden intentions and careful conversations. But Naomi Carter had never treated him like a man with power. She treated him like a person, and that difference changed everything. As Adrian continued to learn more about Naomi's life, he discovered that the kindness he admired was not something she had developed after meeting him. It had been part of her long before their paths crossed. One afternoon, Adrian visited the neighborhood where Naomi had spent many years working and helping others. He expected to learn about her job, but he discovered something much deeper. Former co-workers spoke about her with genuine appreciation. They remembered how she stayed late to help others, how she encouraged new employees, and how she always found time to support people who were having difficult days. Adrian listened quietly as story after story revealed the same truth. Naomi was not kind because she wanted recognition. She was kind because she believed every person deserved respect. That realization stayed with him. He had spent years thinking that influence was measured by how many people knew his name. Naomi showed him that impact was measured by how many people felt valued because of your actions. When Adrian returned home that evening, he found Naomi preparing dinner while listening to music in the kitchen. It was a simple moment, but to him it represented something he had never fully appreciated before. His life had always been surrounded by luxury, yet the moments that brought him the most peace were the ordinary ones shared with her. "I learned something today," Adrian said. Naomi looked at him with curiosity. "What did you learn?" He paused before answering. "That I knew your heart before I knew your story. But now I understand that your story is what made your heart so strong." Naomi smiled softly. She never expected Adrian to fully understand the challenges she had faced. She only hoped he would understand that every person carried a story others could not see. The following weeks brought another change. People around Adrian began noticing that he was different. He was still respected and still carried the same authority, but there was a new patience in the way he handled situations. He asked questions before making decisions. He listened before speaking. He recognized effort from people who were often overlooked. Some people wondered what had caused such a change in a man who once seemed impossible to reach. Adrian never gave a complicated answer. He simply said that someone reminded him of what truly mattered. Naomi never considered herself extraordinary. She believed she was only doing what anyone with compassion should do. But Adrian understood something important. The world often ignored people who worked quietly. It overlooked those who served others without expecting anything in return. Naomi had spent years proving that a person's value was never determined by their appearance, their occupation, or the opinions of strangers. She had shown strength without demanding attention. She had earned respect without asking for it. And Adrian knew that the woman everyone once underestimated was the person who helped him see the world differently. Adrian Blackwell had spent years believing that respect was something people gave only to those who had earned power. He thought influence, reputation, and authority were the foundations of a meaningful life. But the more time he spent with Naomi Carter, the more he understood that he had been measuring the wrong things. The woman, who worked long hours serving others, had shown him a kind of strength that could not be created through wealth or status. She had no need to announce her importance. She carried it quietly through every action. As the months passed, the changes in Adrian became impossible for those around him to ignore. The people who worked with him noticed that he no longer viewed every situation as a matter of control. He began asking for opinions instead of giving immediate orders. He started recognizing the dedication of people whose efforts were usually invisible. The man who once believed emotions were distractions began to understand that compassion was not a weakness. It was a responsibility. Naomi watched these changes with a quiet smile, but she never acted as though she had transformed him. She knew Adrian had chosen this path himself. Real change could not come from someone else forcing a person to become different. It had to come from a person willing to see the truth about themselves. One evening, Adrian and Naomi returned to Bella Vista restaurant for dinner. This time, the experience felt completely different. Naomi walked through the dining room with confidence, no longer carrying the weight of other people's assumptions. The same place where some guests had once overlooked her now felt like a reminder of how far everything had changed. Adrian noticed the way people greeted her. He saw the respect she had earned from co-workers and regular customers. They did not value her because of his name. They valued her because they knew hers. That realization meant more to him than he expected. Adrian had spent years building a reputation that made people remember him. Naomi had spent years building relationships that made people care about her. As they sat together, Adrian looked around the restaurant and reflected on everything that had happened. "You know what surprises me the most?" he said. Naomi looked at him. What? Adrian smiled slightly. I thought I was the one protecting you. But you were the one teaching me how to see people. Naomi shook her head gently. I was only being myself. And that was exactly why Adrian admired her. She never tried to appear powerful. She never tried to prove she was better than anyone else. She simply lived with kindness and self-respect. Later that night, Adrian made another decision that reflected how much he had changed. He began creating opportunities for people in service jobs who were often ignored or undervalued. He wanted others to experience the same recognition Naomi had always deserved. He did not do it because he wanted praise. He did it because he finally understood the importance of seeing people clearly. The world often noticed the loudest voices and the most powerful names. But Naomi had taught him that some of the strongest people were the ones who continued doing good even when nobody was watching. Adrian Blackwell still carried influence, but now he carried something far more important. He carried understanding. And the woman who had once been dismissed as just a waitress had become the person who changed the way he saw humanity itself. Years had passed since the night when Naomi Carter stood quietly in the middle of Bella Vista restaurant while others failed to see her true worth. The world around her had changed, but Naomi had not. She was still the same woman who arrived early, worked with dedication, and treated every person with kindness. She never needed attention, and she never searched for recognition. Her strength came from something much deeper than appearance, status, or reputation. It came from knowing exactly who she was. Adrian Blackwell often thought about that. The Mafia boss who once believed power was the answer to every problem had learned a lesson he never expected. The greatest influence in his life did not come from fear or authority. It came from the woman who quietly reminded him that every person deserved dignity. Adrian was still respected throughout the city. His name still carried influence. But those closest to him noticed the difference. He was no longer a man who measured people by what they could offer him. He became someone who looked for the stories behind their faces. He became someone who understood that every person carried struggles others might never see. One afternoon, Adrian and Naomi visited a community center that had recently received support through one of Adrian's new initiatives. The building was filled with workers, families, and people who were grateful for opportunities they once thought were impossible. Naomi watched as Adrian spoke with people, not above them, but beside them. She saw the same man who once struggled to trust others now taking time to listen. You know, Naomi said softly, I think people would be surprised to see this side of you. Adrian smiled. I think I was surprised too. That simple answer showed how far he had come. He no longer felt the need to prove himself through control. He no longer believed that showing compassion made him less powerful. He finally understood that the way someone treated others revealed more about them than any title ever could. Naomi looked at the people around them and smiled. She never expected her life to influence someone like Adrian Blackwell. She never expected the quiet choices she made every day to create such a powerful change. But that was the nature of true kindness. It did not announce itself. It did not demand attention. It simply changed things one moment at a time. Later that evening, Adrian and Naomi returned home together. The large house that once represented success but distance now felt warm and peaceful. It was no longer just a place filled with luxury. It was a place filled with understanding. Adrian looked at Naomi and thought about the first time he saw her. He remembered how others judged her without knowing her story. He remembered how easily people ignored someone because of appearance or occupation. Most importantly, he remembered how wrong they were. Naomi had never been someone who needed to be rescued. She had always been someone worthy of respect. She had shown him that a person's value was never decided by the opinions of strangers. It was revealed through their actions, their compassion, and the way they treated others when no one was watching. And in the end, the woman everyone underestimated became the person who taught the most powerful man in the city what true strength really looked like.